I was upside down when it happened. Literally. Wrench in one hand, boot jammed against the emergency grav stabilizer, the other hand deep inside a fried circuit cluster that smelled suspiciously like burnt marshmallows in despair. Alarms were pulsing a dull red glow through the maintenance corridor like the universe itself had a headache. Again. I didn't even look up when Moxie, my overly cheerful maintenance droid with a taste for vintage Earth television, rolled into view and said, "Captain Devon, statistically speaking, you are either about to be electrocuted or about to invent a new kind of jazz." "I'll take electrocution," I muttered, yanking the circuit core free with a satisfying crackle. Sparks shot past my nose. Somewhere down the corridor, something howled. Or maybe it was just the vent fans again. Moxie made a concerned whirring noise, then added in its best imitation of an old sitcom dad, "Well, son, if you'd just gotten that engineering degree instead of a minor in alien linguistics." "Save it, Moxie," I snapped, dropping from the wall and wiping sweat off my brow with a rag that used to be a sock. "The comm relay's cooked. Again. I told Command this old junk bucket needed a system upgrade. But no, let's slap on more duct tape and call it innovation." "Duct tape is innovation," Moxie said, proudly extending one of its little tool arms like a cowboy about to draw. I sighed and looked out through the long window that curved over the orbital maintenance bay. Space stretched around us in eerie, shimmering silence. Saturn's rings glistened far below, icy and indifferent. The stars blinked like they knew something I didn't. My reflection in the glass looked tired, mildly electrocuted, and profoundly single. That last part stung a little more than usual. Maybe it was the 3 failed calls from Earth last week. Maybe it was because I'd spent my last birthday patching a coolant pipe with a fork. Maybe it was because my last date had ended with someone saying, "You have the emotional availability of a space mop." Whatever the reason, tonight I felt it. So I did something stupid. Standing alone in the dim light of Orbital Relay Outpost Delta 9, I stepped toward the old transmission console, the one the Union Command said was obsolete, but still pinged deep-range frequencies. I flipped the switch. The mic hummed to life, static-filled and buzzing like it remembered being important once. "Attention," I said, to the galaxy, to the empty station, to the blinking, infinite void. "Is there anyone out there who wants to marry me?" My voice echoed, mocking. "I'm house-trained, mostly. I make a mean, dehydrated lasagna, and my socks rarely match." Moxie whirred and slowly retreated into the shadows, like a disappointed parent. I laughed, shaking my head. "What am I doing?" I muttered. The laughter died as the console lights flickered. Once, twice. Then they glowed a deep, unsettling crimson. The station, which had been groaning and sputtering in its usual symphony of neglect, fell utterly silent. I froze. "Moxie," I called, "please tell me you're rerouting power from the—" "Nope," came Moxie's voice, tinny and afraid. "That wasn't me. And also, you might want to see this." The main screen, which usually displayed telemetry, diagnostics, and reruns of Galaxy Court, Space Lawyers of Justice, had gone black. Then it flashed. A symbol glowed on the screen. Elegant, alien. It looked like a half-moon cradling a drop of blood. And then, in a voice smooth as velvet dipped in moonlight, a message played. "I accept." My mouth went dry. The voice came again. Closer. Warmer. "Your proposal has been received. Preparations are being made." "Oh, no," I whispered. "Yes," Moxie agreed. "Oh, very much no." "I was joking. It was a joke," I shouted at the mic. "Galaxy, that was sarcasm. I didn't mean—" The screen blinked out. Outside the observation window, Saturn's rings shimmered with unnatural light. Then slowly, like a shark cruising just below the surface, something moved. A vessel dropped out of warp, sleek, black. It resembled a cathedral carved from obsidian and starlight, bristling with spires and faintly humming with energy that made the air thicken in my lungs. The kind of ship that didn't just arrive, it arrived with purpose. It docked without permission, its tendrils latching onto our hull with mechanical grace, in a sound like a coffin sealing shut. Klaxons screamed. Emergency protocols lit up. Moxie rolled behind a crate. I reached for the stun baton mounted near the door, more ceremonial than functional, but it felt good to hold something. Maybe it's just a diplomatic vessel, I said. Maybe you're a walrus, Moxie snapped. Run! But I didn't run. I couldn't. The airlock hissed open. She stepped through. At first glance, she looked human. Tall, lean. Her black armor shimmered like wet ink, embroidered with symbols that pulsed faintly in red. Her hair flowed like dark liquid, and her eyes were galaxies. But her ears curved upward, long and elven, twitching slightly as though tuning to frequencies I couldn't hear. She looked at me, her lips curled into a smile that could slice through alloy. I am Valeth, she said, her voice deep and musical, of House Nixthorn, matron of the Voidclad, high descendant of the Crimson Ecliptica. I blinked. Okay, I said. That's, a lot of syllables. She stepped closer, inspecting me like a priceless artifact covered in coffee stains. You called. I have answered. I was kidding, I said, raising both hands. It was a joke. Like, ha ha ha, I'm so lonely I'll marry an alien kind of joke. Valeth tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Sarcasm is a dialect of longing. Your frequency was unmistakable. Lady, I fix space toasters for a living. She smiled again, wider this time, revealing very sharp teeth. Then we shall make a home full of fixed toasters. Moxie peeked out and whispered, I give this marriage 2 weeks. Tops. I haven't even agreed to marry you, I barked. But you did ask, she said simply, lifting her hand. My wrist buzzed. A ring materialized on my finger. Black metal, humming faintly. What the hell is this? The symbol of our union, she said. I accept your bond. I looked at the ring. I looked at her. I looked at the void outside. Okay, I said. This is fine. This is normal. Totally logical consequence of screaming loneliness into deep space. Just another Tuesday. Valeth's ears twitched again. You jest often. I like that. I looked back at Moxie, who had started writing a will. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh, so I did both. You brought a coffin, I said flatly, pointing at the object Valeth had just rolled into my quarters. It was 7 feet long, covered in metallic vines that pulsed a soft red, and had the kind of shape that screamed eternal slumber for the formerly breathing. She turned to it proudly. It is my sleeping vessel, forged from the husks of dying stars and cooled in the winds of a neutron bloom. I blinked. Right. So, not just for show. Valeth gave me a curious look, her head tilted like a cat about to pounce on a toaster. You seem troubled. It's just, I said, trying to find the right words that didn't translate to you terrify me on an existential level. Most people start with flowers. Valeth walked slowly across the room, her armor whispering against itself like silk and razors. My people exchange a resting sanctum to signify commitment. It is a sacred gift. Moxie, who had been hiding inside a cupboard labeled mildly radioactive, poked its lens out and muttered, Romantic. I rubbed my face. This is a misunderstanding. A beautiful, horrifying misunderstanding. Valeth studied me. Is your discomfort because I did not seek permission to board? No, I said, throwing my arms up. My discomfort is because 1 second I'm yelling marriage jokes at the stars, and the next you're docking a cathedral with afterburners onto my station and unpacking your interstellar bed. Then it is the pace that concerns you. Yes, that's it, the pace. It's been less than a day. Technically, we haven't even had a proper date yet. Valeth looked at the ceiling thoughtfully, as if running calculations through her skull. Would battle training in the ship's blood dome count? Do you think that's what a date is? Yes, intimate exposure to one's combat style. It reveals much of the soul. Moxie bleeped. She's not wrong. That's how I met my firewall. I sat down on my cot and sighed deeply. The ring on my finger was still humming, ever so faintly. I'd tried removing it, twice. The first time it turned into liquid and slithered back on. The second time it whispered, do not be ungrateful, in a voice that may or may not have been inside my brain. You can't just claim people, I said. Valeth's ears twitched. You extended an invitation. I was joking. I was being pathetic and lonely and ironic. That wasn't an actual proposal. Irony and sincerity are often indistinguishable in vocal expression. Our species once started a 6,000-year war over a sarcastic diplomatic gift. The ashes of that misunderstanding now form 3 minor moons. I stood. Look, this isn't going to work. I'm not ready to get married, especially to someone I don't even know, who might drink blood, and who, let me just remind you, has a vampire coffin parked next to my toolbox. I do not drink blood. I blinked. Wait, really? She nodded. That is an offensive stereotype. We synthesize our nutrients from dark matter and solar radiation. Blood is inefficient and sticky. Oh, I said, thrown off balance. Well, okay, that's honestly a bit of a relief. But the taste is nostalgic, she added, as though remembering a beloved soup from childhood. My mouth opened and closed like a fish trying to dial tech support. There was a sudden knock, well, more of a thud-thump clang, followed by a voice through the intercom. Security team, we have unauthorized docking. Open up or we're breaching in 20 seconds. Valeth turned her gaze to the door. Should I vaporize them? No, I jumped between her and the control panel. You will not vaporize security. They're just doing their jobs. She paused, considering. Fine, I will stun them. You will do nothing. I turned and hit the comm. Hey guys, it's Devin. All good in here. The ship is a diplomatic vessel. I'm handling it. There was a pause. You're dating the threat, came the response. Working on defining the relationship, I muttered. Stand down. Copy, standing by. Call if she tries to eat you. Valeth looked pleased. They accept our bond. They're afraid you'll crush their lungs, I said. As they should be. She turned and floated, yes, floated, over to her coffin and laid a hand on it like it was an old friend. I will rest now. It is customary to recover strength before the engagement duel. Wait, what? Valeth's expression was unreadable. There are always challenges when a bond is formed. Rivals, jealous ex-lovers, cosmic forces that oppose union. Oh, come on. You will need to prepare, she said calmly, easing open the top of the sleeping vessel. It made a faint sighing sound, as if happy to be reunited with her spine. I am not fighting anyone, especially not a plasma-breathing SpaceX boyfriend. Then we will spar, she said, climbing inside. Hard pass. Very well. Then dream of me. I will be watching. The lid closed with a soft click. The lights dimmed around the coffin. It began to hum gently. Moxie rolled out, scanning the room. So, that's your fiancé. Apparently. 10 credits says she eats your soul by Friday. She said she doesn't eat souls. Yet, I sank into the cot, feeling the weight of absurdity settle onto my shoulders like a galactic tax audit. My brain replayed the last 12 hours on loop. Sarcastic proposal, ominous message, vampire cathedral ship, glowing ring, diplomatic crisis, interstellar snooze box. This is fine, I muttered. Moxie blinked twice, turned slowly toward the airlock and said, I'm going to back up my memory banks now. You know, just in case your dreams end with you vaporized into a poem. Thanks for the support. Any time, Captain Deadmeat. The droid vanished, and I was alone. Well, not exactly. I woke up to the sound of humming, not the gentle kind you might associate with, say, grandmothers or bored elevator musicians. This was a deep, mechanical vibration that rattled my molars and made my toenails feel slightly magnetic. I rolled off my cot, flailing into my boots, and tried to determine if the sound was internal panic or external doom. Spoiler, it was both. Valeth's coffin had opened. Not dramatically, no ominous hiss or theatrical fog, just a smooth, efficient shk. She was sitting upright, back straight, eyes closed like she'd just finished downloading an update on being intimidating. The crimson glow from her armor pulsed in rhythm with the station's heartbeat, which was weird because space stations don't have heartbeats. Good morning, she said without opening her eyes. It's 2:47 a.m., I replied. Not even coffee o'clock. You appear disheveled. I slept in a room with a vampire sarcophagus humming like a planetary engine. You're lucky I didn't wet myself. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly. You joke when you are afraid. I joke when I'm breathing. She stood and stretched her limbs with unnatural grace. Her ears twitched. The ship has shifted orbit slightly. Your station's alignment with Saturn's rings is now symbolically optimal for a blood bonding ritual. That sounds romantic, I said, and extremely concerning. It is the second most binding ceremony in our culture, only edged out by joint conquest. Great. Let's aim for something less conquisty. She tilted her head. You do not wish to merge destinies through ritual? I don't even merge my laundry, I said. Also, your rituals involve blood, and I'm rather fond of all mine staying in me. Valeth walked to the console and ran a hand over the controls. The display flickered and changed to a map of the sector. One icon pulsed bright red. That's not one of ours, I said. She nodded. The Council of Drenhal. They monitored the signal you sent. Wait, the stupid marriage joke? She nodded again. It triggered a summons beacon, coded as a claim signal. Other factions might interpret it as an invitation to compete. I stared at the map, slowly realizing that my single, lonely cry into the void had been picked up by what essentially amounted to an intergalactic dating app with gladiatorial mechanics. You're telling me I started an alien love war? Possibly a skirmish, maybe just a challenge duel. I blinked. To win me? She looked at me like I'd asked whether stars were hot. You are now a prize of cosmic importance. Well, that explains the ego boost I felt brushing my teeth. She turned solemn. They will arrive within 6 cycles. You must choose a weapon or a second. I picked Moxie. There was a loud crash from the hallway, followed by a muffled, "No, you don't." I opened the door to find Moxie tangled in a broken mess of cabling, holding what looked like a toaster modified to fire grappling hooks. What are you doing? Installing defense measures. If I'm going down, I'm taking a few romantic aggressors with me. Valeth approached Moxie. You are his vassal. Moxie flinched. I prefer the term deeply underpaid emotional support unit. You will be his second in the challenge, she said simply, and turned back toward the console. No, Moxie and I said at the same time. Yes, she said without turning. I'm not fighting over a joke marriage, I protested. It is no longer a joke. It was always a joke. Valeth turned, eyes narrowing. You summoned intention into the void. Now it responds. Would you dishonor the echo of your own longing? I opened my mouth, then closed it. That was a frustratingly poetic way to say you screamed into space. Now suck it up. Moxie tapped my leg with a tiny clamp. You need a plan, a real one, or we're going to be space smears on someone's battle recap podcast. I sat down at the table, ran my hands through my hair, and exhaled. All right, I'll talk to the Drenhal. Explain it's a big misunderstanding. Valeth didn't respond. I'll use diplomacy, I added, still no reaction. With words and snacks. People love snacks. She finally looked at me. They are not known for their sense of humor. I'm not known for my muscle tone. Let's both take risks. There was a long silence. Then we prepare, she said. We will meet them at the designated site. Is that a battlefield? It is a ceremonial garden of trials. That sounds exactly like a battlefield with flowers. She gave a small, rare smile. Correct. Moxie let out a mechanical sigh. I'm going to go charge my flamethrower. There's a flamethrower? There is now. I leaned back, letting the absurdity wash over me like a lukewarm bath of stress. In less than 48 hours, I'd gone from fixing interstellar vending machines to being the romantic target of ancient space nobility, with a duel on the horizon, possibly involving alien flowers. I turned to Valeth. You know, back on Earth, people usually swipe right, grab a coffee, maybe go for a walk before deciding to start an intergalactic incident. She tilted her head. We value efficiency. I couldn't argue that, but as I watched her review battle maps with the quiet confidence of someone who'd once arm-wrestled a neutron star, I realized something even more unsettling than blood-bonding rituals or council skirmishes. Part of me wasn't terrified anymore. Part of me was intrigued. The Drenhal vessel arrived like a thunderclap, except without the courtesy of sound. 1 second, the stars were just sitting there, doing their usual twinkly nothing, and the next the black was full of jagged architecture, shaped like someone had stabbed a cathedral with an engine and then given it wings. It hovered outside my station's docking perimeter, not moving, not signaling, just watching. Valeth said this was typical. I said it was creepy. Moxie said it was time to update its will. We had 6 hours until the meeting. 6 hours. That's not enough time to emotionally prepare for brunch, let alone an ancient alien trial over a misunderstanding that began with me yelling romantic despair into the void like a caffeinated idiot. Valeth stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind her back, watching the incoming data. Her ears twitched occasionally, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. Probably the sound of fate chuckling. "They bring an arbiter," she said finally. "Is that good news? Or like cosmic death bingo bad?" "Neither. It means they take your worth seriously," Moxie snorted. "Devin once spilled chili into the quantum relay. That's the extent of his worth." "That was one time," I said. "And it was low viscosity chili." Valeth didn't laugh, but there was a subtle rise to her brows. Progress. She approached the panel and placed her hand against it. Symbols I couldn't read spiraled up from the console like they were forming language mid-thought. "This arbiter is known as Tyroline, the Singularity Born." Moxie's screen flickered. "That sounds like someone who names their sword." "They do," Valeth said. "Oh boy." The plan, if you could call it that, was to meet on a neutral satellite known as Ceres 4, which was, according to the database, mostly composed of crystalline sands, dangerous flora, and a breathable atmosphere that somehow still made your teeth itch. Lovely. I asked if we could bring a picnic blanket or maybe some weapons. Valeth packed both. We docked on the surface in silence. The Ceres 4 sky pulsed gently, a kaleidoscope of static blue and electric orange. The air tasted like dry lightning and root beer. I felt like my bones were buzzing. Either that or I was having a highly specific panic attack. Waiting for us at the center of the meeting ring was a figure who clearly hadn't gotten the memo about business casual. Tyrellin was tall, draped in living armor that shimmered with embedded stars. His face was angular, not in a handsome way, but in the way cliffs look handsome before they crush your hovercar. He held a staff that radiated ancient judgment. He looked directly at me and said, "You are the one who screamed into the dark." "Technically," I shouted, I said. "Screaming is more high-pitched and less articulate. I heard the loneliness of 1,000 orbitless moons." "That's impressive," I said, because I mostly meant it as a joke. Tyrellin didn't blink. "There is no such thing as a joke, only truth, disguised by fear." Moxie muttered, "Okay, Socrates." Valeth stepped forward. "He is mine by right of claim, but I allow him voice. Let him speak." "Oh, good," I said. "I love speaking under cosmic pressure." Tyrellin nodded solemnly. "Proceed." I cleared my throat, mostly to fill the terrifying silence. "So here's the thing. I made a sarcastic comment. You know, the kind people do when they're alone in space too long. It was meant to be funny, or tragically funny. You know, that sweet spot between tears and chuckles." Nobody moved. "What I'm saying is," I continued, "I didn't mean to summon any blood oaths, challenge rituals, or potential soul duels. I'm flattered. Deeply. I mean, who wouldn't be flattered by being the prize in a supernatural space courtship? But I didn't know the rules. I didn't know I was transmitting on Galactic Tinder with the duel to the death filter turned on." Tyrellin was silent for a long moment. Then, "You admit to ignorance." "Absolutely," I said. "If ignorance were a sport, I'd be the MVP of this quadrant." He turned to Valeth. "He lacks honor. He possesses humor," she said, "and humility. That is rarer than force. Is he worth protection?" She looked at me and her voice dropped into something soft but unbreakable. "Yes." Tyrellin turned to Moxie. "And you? Are you his witness?" "I'm his accountant/escape plan," Moxie said. "And I can confirm that Devin is, while statistically unimpressive, remarkably good at staying alive, often by accident." "Noted," Tyrellin said. "Then we shall proceed to the right of intent." Wait, what's that?" "Affirmation," Valeth said. "Without combat." I exhaled, relieved. "In theory," she added. Why add that last part? Tyroline gestured, and the earth beneath our feet pulsed. A ring of luminous crystals rose, each one vibrating with sound that hadn't yet decided whether to be music or menace. In the center was a platform, hovering 3 feet above the ground. "Step forward, Devon of Earth," the arbiter said. "Speak your intent." I stepped onto the platform, my palms sweaty enough to short out minor electronics. The crystals pulsed. "My intent," I began, "is to not die, and ideally to leave here with all my blood still inside me." The crystals changed color. I took that as a continue. "I don't know what I want yet, but I want to find out. With honesty, with choice, not out of obligation." There was silence, and then the crystals turned green. I assumed that meant not death. Tyroline turned to Valeth. "And you?" "My intent is to understand his orbit, to protect, not possess, to walk beside, not ahead." Crystals pulsed violet. That seemed good. Tyroline lifted his staff. "Then it is noted. The bond is not sealed, but acknowledged. Let none contest this claim without consequence." A deep vibration passed through the ground, like the planet itself exhaled. The duel was over. I was alive. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to run away. The moment we stepped back aboard the station, the lights flickered like they were reconsidering our presence. The artificial gravity lagged for a split second, then stabilized with a reluctant hum, as if even the station had expected me to come back in a bag of regret and failure. But I was intact, breathing, mostly untraumatized, and apparently tentatively acknowledged by a galactic death priest as a valid participant in an interstellar misunderstanding. So, progress. Moxie rolled ahead of us with the proud swagger of a toaster that had survived a thunderstorm. "Well, congratulations, Devon. You're officially the most romantically dramatic human in the quadrant. Don't forget, accidentally spiritually betrothed to a vampire alien," I said. "Right," she beeped. "I'd leave that off your resume unless you're applying to a soap opera." Velith was quiet as we walked down the corridor, her steps soundless, her posture perfectly upright, her ears occasionally twitching toward sounds I couldn't hear. I glanced over, unsure if she was angry, confused, or just busy recalibrating her internal threat index to account for me being an unpredictable bag of jokes and soft tissue. "So," I said, casually scratching the back of my neck, "was that whole right of intent thing normal? Or did we just improvise our way through a cosmic engagement ceremony?" She looked at me, her expression unreadable. It was within acceptable parameters, slightly unconventional, but honest. "I'm sensing that's not a compliment." "It is. You survived without invoking trial by plasma." "Well, that's always the goal on a first date." She stopped walking and turned to face me. "You continue to refer to this as a date." I shrugged. "I mean, there was ritual, fancy words, glowing rocks. We didn't die. Honestly, it's going better than half the dates I had in college." Her lips quirked, just barely. "Your humor is disarming." "That's the idea. If I keep everyone confused, nobody stabs me." We reached the common room. The main monitor had updated itself while we were gone. A new transmission was in the queue, marked with an encryption level I hadn't even known we had. Moxie rolled toward the console and scanned the header. "Huh, this came from the Zelmar Republic." Valeth's head tilted slightly. "Unexpected. Are they friendlier than the Drenhall?" "They hold a more academic view of bonding rituals. Less blood, more debate." "Oh, thank God," I muttered. "I might finally win something through talking." Moxie tapped the console, and a hologram popped up, a Zelmarian diplomat in a crisp silver uniform, long, feathery antennae twitching above their head like they were picking up invisible radio shows. The message began without preamble. "To the human who broadcast an unclaimed marital call into the void, greetings. We have reviewed your emotional data signature. After rigorous analysis, we believe you may be a viable candidate for the honor sync trials of House Zelmar. A delegate will arrive within 72 hours. Prepare." The hologram winked out. I blinked. "Wait, so now another alien race wants to marry me?" Moxie tilted toward me. "You're trending. This is not how I imagined becoming popular." Valeth's eyes narrowed. Zelmar trials are verbal, but they are not gentle. You must defend your identity, your intention, your emotional continuity. I don't even know what I had for breakfast yesterday, I said. How am I supposed to defend my emotional continuity? You must declare what you are and prove it with coherence. I've never been coherent in my life. Moxie beeped cheerfully. We've noticed. Valeth crossed the room and pulled a long, thin device from the wall panel, a training rod I'd seen her use it once to parry a plasma knife while yawning. She handed it to me. I don't need to fight the Zelmarians, I said. This is not for them, she replied. It is for you. Balance is not just physical. I was always more of a falling down in style guy. Then we begin with falling. She led me to the empty gym bay, a smooth, wide room with gravity you could dial up or down depending on how masochistic you were feeling. Valeth set it to 1.2 Earth gravities, probably because she enjoys watching me flop around like a confused manatee. We trained for hours, or what felt like hours. It was probably 40 minutes in one sprained dignity. Valeth corrected my grip, my posture, my breathing, and then, when I wasn't paying attention, tapped me lightly on the forehead with her elbow. I fell over like a stunned marionette. You lead with your shoulders, she said. You betray intent. I'm mostly built on betrayal and carbohydrates. She helped me up. Her touch was strong but careful. There was something in her face then. Less like a warrior, more like a witness. Watching me fail, yes, but watching something else underneath it. You do not have to be the strongest, she said quietly. You only have to remain yourself. Well, I said, brushing myself off, that I can do. I've had years of practice disappointing expectations. Later, as I sat icing my pride, Moxie rolled in carrying a datapad. So I ran simulations on these Zelmar debates. If you say the wrong metaphor, they treat it as perjury. That's insane. That's bureaucracy, she corrected. Valeth took the pad, scanned it, and handed it to me. We will prepare, I groaned. This was supposed to be a lonely life of quiet isolation, remember? Me, some stars, maybe a few bad decisions, and a cat. You still have that option, Valeth said. I looked at her. Do I? Really? She didn't blink. Yes. That stayed with me long after we all went quiet, that I still had a choice, that nothing had been taken from me, only offered. And for the first time since this started, I realized something else. I didn't want to walk away. Not yet. The Zelmar delegate arrived precisely 37 hours later, which Moxie called early, and I called a cosmic ambush. Their vessel was an obsidian prism lined with oscillating glyphs that pulsed like a heartbeat, synced to some philosophical rave. It didn't land so much as phase halfway into the station's docking ring, ignoring most laws of physics and all laws of polite arrival. I waited in the vestibule with Valeth, heart thudding, posture awkward. I wasn't sure what I expected. Something humanoid, maybe. Maybe something with a clipboard and a therapist's stare. What I got was a 6-foot-tall, bioluminescent being who looked like a jellyfish mated with a cathedral window. Their limbs drifted like smoke. Their eyes blinked on vertical axes, and when they spoke, it was in chords that resonated in my ribs. I am Kizin, they said, their voice like a harp falling down a staircase. Interpreter of identity? Are you the instigator? I considered lying. Yes. But to be fair, it was more of a sarcastic cry into the void than a deliberate cross-species proposal. That is sufficient, Kizin replied. Your emotional waveform was potent. Several conclaves filed interest. House Zelmar claims priority. Do I get a say in that? Yes, but only if your coherence exceeds our expectations. Well, that's horrifying. Correct. They floated past me without walking and left a faint trail of ozone and something I would later describe as nostalgic anxiety. We followed them to the main gathering chamber. Valeth had taken to standing close, not protectively exactly, but like someone ready to correct reality with a blade if it misbehaved. Moxie had rigged the room with translator nodes because apparently the Zelmar debates involved multiple wavelengths, including emotional aura, metaphor density, and a mysterious category labeled existential consistency. I asked what that meant. Moxie said, try not to contradict your soul. No pressure. Kizin stood at the center of a radiant data circle. We begin the trial of accord, they said. You will be posed 3 questions. You must answer not with fact, but with clarity. Can I at least phone a friend? That is phase 2. Phase 1 is solitude. Valeth stepped back. Moxie muted herself. I was alone in the circle, facing a glowing entity who looked like a mistake made by a poet in a fusion reactor. Keesan's first question echoed through every speaker and bone in the room. Who are you when no one sees you? Oh, good. Existential vulnerability right out of the gate. I cleared my throat. I'm the guy who talks to himself in empty hallways, who makes dumb jokes to pretend he's not scared, who hesitates before pressing send. I'm the voice in my own head saying, don't screw this up, and the smaller voice saying, you already did, but maybe that's okay. I'm not special, but I'm real and trying. There was silence. The lights shifted. The air tasted like citrus and static. Kizan tilted slightly. Second question. What do you fear you truly want? That I want connection, but I don't know how to not ruin it. That I want to matter. That I want to be seen, really seen, and not flinch when someone doesn't like what they find. That I want someone who chooses me not because I'm impressive, but because I'm me, awkward metaphors and all. This time the silence lasted longer. A soft hum rippled through the room, like someone was tuning a cosmic violin. Final question, Kizan said. Why did you call out? That was the one that hit hardest. Because I was tired, I said quietly. Because space is loud and empty all at once. Because I didn't think anyone would hear, and that felt safer than hoping. Because I was alone, and I didn't want to be. Not really. Kizan didn't reply immediately. The chamber lights dimmed, then flared again, brighter than before. Their voice returned, softened by something almost like reverence. Your coherence exceeds statistical probability. Your metaphors align. House Zelmar acknowledges your truth. Oh, thank God. We also extend honorary scholastic union status, they added. Wait, what does that mean? It is a formal offer to join our cognitive heritage. You may decline, but understand, you are now a known entity. You mean, I'm famous? In certain academic circles, Kizan confirmed. That's not nearly as fun as it sounds. The trial ended, not with applause, but with a gentle pulse of recognition. Kizan bowed, or at least dipped in a way that felt ceremonial, and glided out of the room, leaving behind an envelope. An actual envelope. Moxie scanned it immediately and announced it was safe, which I appreciated given the last letter I received exploded in 14-dimensional irony. Inside the envelope was a small data crystal and a note. Your loneliness resonated. We hope your clarity endures. Valeth approached me quietly. You did not collapse. Not yet, I said, but I am holding out for a celebratory nap. She tilted her head. You were afraid. Still am. But you did not lie. That is strength. Or poor impulse control. You did well. I looked at her, studying the edges of her composure. Do you think I passed some kind of test? No, she said. I think you stopped testing yourself. Later, in the quiet of my quarters, I stared at the stars and wondered how many people were still out there, shouting into the dark, hoping someone would answer. And then I realized, maybe the answer doesn't always come in a way you expect. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a tall alien woman with long ears, a fierce stare, and a quiet promise that you are not alone, even when you start with a joke. I woke up to the sound of Moxie screaming, not screaming in a panicked, we're under attack kind of way. It was more of a digital shriek of discovery, the type she only emitted when she found a new, deeply upsetting galactic regulation, or when the coffee synthesizer was on the fritz again and giving out hot soup labeled espresso. I sat up groggily, blinking at the wall as it unhelpfully scrolled through news headlines from 3 solar systems ago. Moxie, I mumbled, please tell me this isn't another interstellar engagement offer. Worse, she chirped from the corridor. You've been invited to a summit. Of what? Emotional anomalies. Is that bad? Well, it means you're officially categorized as a relational irregularity. That sounds like a disease. It's more like a government-funded group therapy session, with snacks. Valeth appeared at the doorway, silent as a thought that hasn't fully committed to existing yet. He must decline. Why? I asked, still trying to brush sleep from my teeth. The summit is hosted by the Threx and Trimind. They catalog behavioral disruptions for philosophical weaponization. That sounds made up. It is not. They once turned a wedding toast into an act of warfare. I mean, to be fair, I've been to a few weddings that came close. Valeth crossed her arms, eyes narrowing slightly. Your attendance would alert their cognitive registry. They would study you, dissect your speech patterns. Joke's on them, I said. Even I don't understand half the things I say. Moxie rolled into the room, projecting a hologram of the invitation. It pulsed gently in shades of amber and lavender, like it wanted to be soothing but couldn't quite commit. The text read, "To the human anomaly. Your resonance has destabilized several expected emotional paradigms. We request your presence. Compensation includes rare desserts." They're offering dessert? I said. You're not going, Valeth replied. You can't just decide that. I can, she said, when it involves you becoming a data point in a weaponized empathy experiment. Just one dessert? They ferment cake with ambient tension. Okay, yeah, that's a red flag. We declined the invitation with what Moxie called passive-aggressive diplomacy, which mostly involves sending back a glittery gif of a cat shrugging. Interstellar communication etiquette had gone rapidly downhill since humans introduced memes to the wider galaxy. Somehow, we'd become the equivalent of raccoons showing up at a banquet and just staying. With the summit off the schedule, I found myself in the rare position of having nothing urgent to do except process how bizarre everything had become. I mean, it had started with a joke. One dumb, sarcastic yell into the void. And now I was part of galactic courtship customs, philosophical crossfire, and apparently eligible for dessert-based studies. I wandered the station, half thinking, half avoiding Valeth. Not because I didn't want to see her, but because lately, every time we talked, the space between us filled with an increasingly complex silence, one that felt less like discomfort and more like anticipation. I found her eventually in the observation chamber, standing perfectly still, watching the binary system swirl past. She didn't look at me when I entered, but I felt her acknowledge me in the way gravity acknowledges a falling object. Can I ask you something? I said. She didn't turn. You may. This whole thing, United States, is it real? She was quiet for a long time. You mean, is it biological? A byproduct of pheromonal cross-contamination? An accidental ritual triggering unexpected consequence? I was hoping for something more poetic, but sure, start with that. She turned then, slowly. It is real to me. Even though I'm just some strange human with bad reflexes and worse timing. Precisely because of that, I blinked. You're into bad timing? No, she said, but I am drawn to unpredictability, to choices made in defiance of design. You are not logical, but you are sincere. I'm like a heartfelt spreadsheet full of typos. That is not inaccurate. We stood in silence. The stars spun lazily beyond the glass, completely unaware of how two tiny people were trying to understand each other in the middle of a floating metal tin. Do you think it's possible, I asked, that maybe this was meant to happen? I think meaning is a story we choose to believe, she said, but I choose this one. For once, I didn't joke. I didn't try to deflect it with a quip or a shrug or some metaphor about microwave burritos and loneliness. I just nodded, and that was enough. Moxie pinged our comms just then, like she had perfect comedic timing. Hey, lovebirds, you're going to want to see this. We rushed to the control room. The main monitor showed a ripple in subspace, a kind of undulating bloom like someone had dropped a stone into the fabric of reality. According to Moxie's scans, it wasn't natural. Something, or someone, was pinging the universe like a sonar. What is that? I asked. It's a summoning signal, she said, and it's encoded in your voice. My what now? She rewound the waveform. I heard my own voice, warped and fragmented. Is there anyone who wants to marry me? Followed by a pulse, then a response. Not Valeth's this time. Not a single being. A chorus. I said, my throat going dry. How many species did that joke reach? Best guess, Moxie said. All of them. The signal pulsing through subspace was growing stronger, a cosmic symphony expanding beyond any single species' reach. It was no longer a whisper but a chorus, an invitation broadcast across light years. I stood on the observation deck of the station, Valeth by my side, Moxie humming quietly in the background as she analyzed the incoming data with relentless curiosity. So, apparently, I said, rubbing my temple, my little joke is now the intergalactic version of a viral meme, except instead of cute cats, it's marriage proposals. Valeth smiled, her kind of smile, subtle but real. You have created a nexus of connection. Few do so unintentionally. I snorted. I prefer to think of it as accidental chaos with mild consequences. Chaos often births order, she said, or at least new possibilities. I glanced at her long, elegant ears catching the starlight and thought how strange it was that the alien woman who once terrified me had become my anchor. Not just because she was alien, not because of her elven ears or her quiet strength, but because she had shown me a different kind of courage, the bravery to be vulnerable. Remember when I shouted that joke at the universe? Thought I was just airing some midlife crisis on a whim? I said. Valeth nodded. And now I realize it was a call, not for an answer exactly, but for connection, for someone or something to say, I see you. Moxie beeped, drawing our attention. The data stream on her screen showed incoming responses. Dozens, then hundreds. Species from the farthest reaches replying in forms both familiar and bizarre. It was a cosmic dance of acknowledgement, a ripple of recognition spreading faster than any faster-than-light message. Seems like the universe is in the mood for weddings, I joked. Valeth laughed softly. And you, human, are at the center of it. Center of chaos, maybe, I said. But also of something more, she added. Growth, understanding, connection. The station's AI suddenly interrupted with a low, melodious tone, an incoming transmission from House Zelmar. The hologram of Kizin shimmered into existence, their bioluminescent form casting prismatic shadows across the room. We acknowledge your evolution, Kizin said, voice echoing like a symphony of light and sound. Your resonance has fostered unprecedented alliances. Your sincerity has sparked dialogues beyond logic, beyond calculation. I swallowed. So what does this mean for me? You are no longer merely a human with a loud joke. You are a symbol, a bridge. Great. Now I have to live up to being a cosmic mascot, I muttered. Kizin's form shimmered with what I could only interpret as amusement. Do not underestimate the power of being yourself. Valeth stepped forward, her eyes steady. We offer you a choice, to continue this journey as an emissary between worlds or to return to your solitude. The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. I thought about the lonely nights, the sarcastic outbursts, the unexpected arrival of an alien vampire woman with long ears who didn't just want to marry me. She wanted to see me, to know me. I choose connection, I said finally. Not because I have all the answers, but because I'm tired of pretending I don't want this. Moxie chimed in with a digital chuckle. Finally, took you long enough. Valeth smiled softly. Then the next chapter begins. In the weeks that followed, life transformed. I learned to navigate the complexities of interspecies courtship rituals, decoding the subtle cues of beings who communicated through light, thought, and sometimes interpretive dance. Valeth taught me patience and honesty, showing that love could be both fierce and gentle. I found humor in the absurdity of galactic matchmaking bureaucracies, in the endless misunderstandings when metaphors got lost in translation, and in the fact that somewhere out there, dozens of species now knew my voice and my terrible jokes. One evening, under the shifting colors of a binary sunset, Valeth reached for my hand. You have changed. So have you. Together, we are less alone. Even if it started with a joke. She smiled, her eyes glinting with a light older than stars. Sometimes the universe answers in ways we cannot predict. And in that moment, I understood that my journey wasn't about avoiding loneliness or finding a neat ending. It was about embracing the unexpected, laughing at the cosmic joke, and finding someone who would laugh with me. Because sometimes the greatest adventure is simply saying yes to whatever comes next.